Do you know what's harder than ranking Iron Maiden's best songs? Picking their worst ones. So today let's do the unthinkable and choose the weakest track from every single Iron Maiden album. Here you go.
What the?
Now, before the pitchforks come out, I simply have to point out that in case you guys don't know, I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan, and I actually love each and every one of those records, including the underrated ones. So picking the worst track from some of those was simply a torture for me, but the cruel rules of this games clearly state that I simply have to choose the weakest song from each album, which doesn't always mean that it is actually a bad song. Although I do understand that in some cases you might simply hate me for it. But alright, let's do it. Iron Maiden's self-titled album is one of the strongest debut albums in the world of metal. It was the album which established Iron Maiden as a rising force in the world of new wave of British heavy metal, and at the same time clearly distinguished them from the rest of the movement. And given the fact that many songs from this record were written years before they actually made it on the album, Iron Maiden did have quite a lot of time to perfect those, and that's exactly why this album is so strong. And selecting a weak song from it is a very hard task. Yet, if we're being very honest, some of the tunes on it simply hit harder than the others. And if I would simply have to choose the one which possibly has the weakest punch of all, I would most likely have to go with Charlotte the Harlot, which in honesty is a very hard decision for me, as it is the only song in Iron Maiden's entire catalog credited solely to the legendary guitarist Dave Murray. And I simply hate doing this to Dave. By the way guys, real quick, just want to point out that only around 30% of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed to this channel. So if you're not one of those, and especially if this is not the first video you're watching here, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing right now. Let's continue building this amazing heavy metal community together. When it comes to killers, the choice on one hand becomes much harder, but on the other much easier, at least to me. As here's the thing, many actually believe that Killers is a more perfected version of the sound Iron Maiden propagated on their debut album, and in some capacity it is true, as the band themselves actually criticized their debut album quite a lot for its production, and believe that it is Killers that represent the early Iron Maiden sound the best. While all of the above, in all fairness, might actually be true, I'd actually dare to say that composition-wise, each song on Iron Maiden might actually be slightly stronger on average than on Killers, meaning that each song on that album is equally as strong as the other one, and that's exactly why it was so hard for me to choose the weakest track from their debut album. But at the same time, when it comes to Killers, as much as I love this record, I think that I have much easier time choosing the weakest song on it, and at least to me, it would have to be Innocent Exile, which, by the way, although was a setlist stable for Iron Maiden in their early days, has never been performed live after 1981. Which most likely says that Iron Maiden themselves might actually agree with me on that one. And then came The Number of the Beast, the album which turned Iron Maiden from one of the most influential new wave of British heavy metal bands to one of the biggest heavy metal bands on the planet. And here's the thing, when it comes to this album, most Iron Maiden fans and the band themselves would pretty much always choose Gangland as the weakest song off of it, and they have been quite vocal about it over the past 40 years. In all honesty, I never understood the hate for Gangland, and even more, I completely do not support the idea of switching it with Total Eclipse, which has happened on the latest remasters. And when it comes to the weakest song from Iron Maiden's third studio album, at least to me, the choice is very clear. And it is its opening track, as although it features some incredible guitar work, which has evolved quite a lot from its early instances, which we know this song from the 1970s. Still, compared to all of the other masterpieces on this record, at least to me, well, it doesn't really represent the spirit of this album and doesn't really do it justice as an opening track. But at the same time, although we all may agree to disagree regarding the worst track from the Number of the Beast album, when it comes to Peace of Mind, I'm pretty sure that our decision would be unanimous. Quest for Fire. As come on, Iron Maiden is the band known for giving some incredible history lessons, and I'll be honest with you, they actually made me love history much more so, which I most likely would have if I would not have been an Iron Maiden fan. But at the same time, this was actually one of the worst history lessons they've ever given.
In a time when dinosaurs walked the earth.
But then came Power Slave, the album which at least to me is nearly flawless. And choosing the worst song from it becomes a torture for an Iron Maiden fan. And although if we simply take a look at the streaming statistics, the clear outsiders from this album are Lost for Words, Big Aura, and Back in the Village, I simply cannot make myself to name either of those songs as the weakest ones from Power Slave. And by the way, whatever song I picked from this album is not really a weak one, it's just weaker compared to the other songs on this masterpiece. And yes, my choice might actually vary depending on my mood at that given time. But if we talk about right now, I would most likely have to go with a song inspired by Ridley Scott's 1977 film The Duelists, which although has some incredible twin guitar work, and especially in its middle section, might be the one that hits me the weakest right at this moment of time. Although, once again, by no means it is a weak song, and I don't know about you, but I would simply love for Iron Maiden to finally perform it live for the very first time sometime in the future. And the same goes for Somewhere in Time, previously one of the most underrated and underappreciated 1980s albums by Iron Maiden, yet which has finally been given justice during the Future Past tour over the past couple of years, and which, depending on my mood, might actually be one of my favorite albums, and not only in the Iron Maiden discography, but in music overall. So yes, choosing the weakest song from it is another one which is really hard for me personally. But given the cruel rules of this game, I simply cannot allow myself to skip any records in this video, and thus to my deepest regret, I might actually have to go with Sea of Madness as the least strong song from Somewhere in Time. Iron Maiden's 7th studio album, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, is the first and the only truly conceptual album by the legendary heavy metal band. And thus choosing the weakest song from it is, on one hand, simply impossible, because you are supposed to enjoy this record in its entirety from the very beginning until the very end. And it is true that only in such a way each song from it actually opens up to the fullest, at least to me. But at the same time, this fact actually shows you which song is the weakest off of it by doing a simple exercise of choosing the one which stands out the least when listened to by itself compared to the other songs. And given the fact that only 2 songs from this album have never actually been performed by Iron Maiden live from the stage, it's gotta be one of those, right?
Yes, that's true.
And so yes, when choosing the weakest song from Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, I would actually go with one of the 2 songs which Iron Maiden never performed live before. That one being The Prophecy, which although I simply love listen to when I listen to Seventh Son of a Seventh Son as an album, and I never skip it. Ever. I actually realized that I also rarely go back to it and re-listen to it by itself, without the other songs from that record. Guys, real quick, just wanted to thank all my patrons and all the YouTube channel members and everyone who's rocking out on the Run For Your Lives tour in the Up the Pilgrims merch, or any other Metal Pilgrim merch. It is so freaking awesome to see all the pictures of you hanging out together and receive all the feedback of the shows right from the ground. And just in case if any of you would like to receive some Metal Pilgrim merch and support this show today, just know that you can order it via the links in the description to this video. And in case if you decide to do that, thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. It is no secret for anyone who is not new to our Up the Iron series that I am not really a fan of No Prayer for the Dying. I mean, it's a great album, but at least to me, it is actually the weakest Iron Maiden album in their entire catalog. And yes, even compared to Virtual 11 and the X Factor. And although I really like the idea of Iron Maiden trying to go back to basics on their 8th studio record, there are still some tracks from this record which are, although good by themselves, no, seriously, and are better than 99% of metal released that same year, are still not at par with what Iron Maiden could do at that time. And although some of them are really catchy and fun, and I would love to hear any of those live by Iron Maiden, even if they would have to sacrifice one of the legendary hits like The Trooper for it. But still, the song which I never really cared for at all from this album is The Assassin, which I know is kind of weird because it is actually a favorite for quite a lot of the people I spoke to before. But nevertheless, in all honesty, I am actually to this very day quite surprised that it was The Assassin which was among the songs which Iron Maiden decided to take on the road to represent No Prayer for the Dying, instead of the songs from this album which would actually rock life. But when it comes to Fear of the Dark, the tables turn. As the thing is that it was the album which has actually introduced me to Iron Maiden, and that's exactly why it holds a very special place in my heart. Just like its follow-up, which was the first Iron Maiden album which I bought with my own money. But for now, I simply have to point out that I love going back to Fear of the Dark and re-listening to it in its entirety. And yes, I even love the song which comes before the title track on it. So despite me totally understanding that Fear of the Dark is not really the strongest album in Iron Maiden's catalog, I mean, by far, still to me it is actually one of those records which is very hard to choose the worst song from it, as I truly believe that some of the forgotten tracks from the band's 9th studio record should be given much more justice than they have been before today. Yeah, since I simply have to choose one track of it to be an scapegoat, I would have to go with The Apparition. Although, honestly, I love that song.
In a world of confusion, people never say what they mean.
And thus we come to the Blaze Bayley era of Iron Maiden, the era which so many Iron Maiden fans love to give hard time to, but which I simply love to defend. As once again, it was the Blaze Bayley albums which were the first albums which I bought with my own money. And thus both of them hold a very special place in my heart, and I actually would dare to say that both of these albums are very consistent. Probably some of the most consistent albums this band has ever made. And when it comes to the X Factor, each song off of it is equally as strong as the other one. And that's exactly why choosing the weakest song from it is a very hard task. So I would simply have to go with the one which hits me the weakest today musically. That one being Blood on the World's Hands, which although I will choose to pick on in this video, is still sadly very relevant today in 2025. And I would actually encourage everyone to re-listen to it once again, right after watching this video. But at the same time, as much as I love the X Factor and Virtual 11, when it comes to the first one, it is very hard for me to choose the weakest song of it. But I cannot really say the same thing about the latter one, as at least to me, the choice is very clear. And to this very day, I have no idea how come the band has chosen this song to represent their 11th studio record. To this very day, I actually believe that Brave New World is the best possible reunion album Iron Maiden could have released at that time. And I still remember the excitement of holding that record in my hands and playing it for the very first time. That feeling of having Bruce Dickinson and Adrian Smith back in the family was simply mind-blowing for me as a teenager, and to this very day gives me goosebumps whenever I try to remember it. And it was specifically because of how cohesive this album was and how diverse it was at the same time, both going back to the roots of the classic Iron Maiden sound, but at the same time moving this band forward on each track on it. And I actually believe that each song from Brave New World was essential to grab the attention of the different eras of Iron Maiden fans. And that's exactly why the strongest and the weakest songs from it might differ for each and every one of us. But when it comes to me, I would most likely have to go with the Nomad as the weakest song from Brave New World. And not really because it's a weak song, but simply because the other tracks on Brave New World are freaking masterpieces. And the same goes for Dance of Death, which, although might not have the coolest album artwork, still, at least to me, is one of the best post-reunion Iron Maiden albums. And the thing is that just like the X Factor, it holds a very dear place in my heart because of, where I was at when I first heard it. And the funniest thing, that it is one of those albums which I tend to go back to and re-listen to it in its entirety much more often than even some of the golden era Iron Maiden records. And so when it comes to the weakest song from it, I simply couldn't choose. And I actually even considered flipping a coin for it, which I did not do, and simply decided to land on Gates of Tomorrow. Although, in all honesty, tomorrow, my answer might actually change. I know for a fact that Iron Maiden's 14th studio album, A Matter of Life and Death, is a favorite Iron Maiden album for many of this band's fans. And although it never really was the case, I truly do understand the love for it. But at the same time, when it comes to the weakest song from A Matter of Life and Death, I actually did not really have that much of a hard time choosing it, as at least to me, it might actually be Lord of Light, which I would most likely not have chosen if the band decided to go with a slightly different tempo for this song. But that, I guess, is topic for a different video.
You don't see this strange world quite the same as me.
And then came the Final Frontier, the album which so many of us actually feared would be the last one in Iron Maiden's discography, which, yet which to all of our happiness, was not. And so when it comes to the band's 15th studio record, I actually did not have a hard time choosing the weakest song from it at all. As at least to me, it always was Mother of Mercy. And I don't even know why. It just always was. Although, if Satellite 15 would have been released as a separate track from the Final Frontier, I would most likely have to go with that one instead. The Book of Souls, at least to me, is an excellent post-reunion Iron Maiden album, as it perfectly captured the band's updated sound, possibly much better so than even on A Matter of Life and Death or The Final Frontier. And at the same time, it is one of the most cohesive and coherent records Iron Maiden released post-2000s. Yet at the same time, when it comes to the weakest song from it, well, I think that many of us would agree that it might actually be The Man of Sorrows, which for some weird reason, at least to me, was always simply viewed as a bridge between the main part of the Book of Souls and the masterpiece of an ending, that one being Empire of the Clouds. Which, I don't know about you, but I would simply freak out if the band would perform live at some stage in the future. And thus we come to the band's latest studio output, as of right now, Senjutsu. The first of the 17 albums which we actually discussed and heard together while this channel was already intact, and that's why it's a very special one for all of us metal pilgrims, as it is the first one we heard together as a family. In all honesty, as much as I actually love this record, and I actually believe that it is one of those albums which will be a grower, and in 10 or 20 years, many actually may consider it being one of the strongest ones in the band's post-reunion era. Nevertheless, at least to me, The Time Machine was always the song which I considered the weakest from it, from my first listen of this album. And even today, several years later, I still stand by my words. As although it's not really a bad song at all, well, it simply fades compared to some of the other ones on the band's 17th studio record. But nevertheless, that's it. This is my choice of the weakest songs from every Iron Maiden album. So please don't hate me for it, but instead let us know what about you. Which songs do you consider the weakest and why? And do you agree with my personal choice? I'm really curious to find out. As well as which band, now that we did Metallica and Iron Maiden, we should do a similar exercise with next. But for now, thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and we'll prevail. Slava Ukraini!